Welcome, everyone. Today we are tackling a huge concept, the Constitution. We're not just looking at it as a piece of paper, but as a philosophical engine, one that shapes everything about our political lives. And we're going to be digging into a really important philosophical essay on the topic, framed by thinkers like Mortimer Adler.
That's right.
Now, before we get started, we should mention that what you're hearing is a unique two-host AI conversation. It's powered by Google's Notebook LM, and it's designed to give you a much deeper, more dynamic analysis of this essay.
We want to get far beyond a simple summary.
Exactly. We're here to guide you through the core ideas.
And our mission today is really specific. We want to show how constitutional principles take these big abstract values, I'm talking about liberty, justice, consent, and turn them into real working political structures.
So by the end, you'll have a solid grasp of its meaning, its history, and really what's philosophically at stake.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start with that core meaning, especially in Adler's sense. What does a constitution actually do? Calling it a rule book just feels way too simple.
It is. It's so much more. Think of it as a society's foundational act of self-limitation. The essay makes it clear that a constitution has three main jobs, all linked together.
Which are?
It organizes political power, it limits that power, and, this is the most important part, it makes that power accountable.
Let's focus on that accountability piece for a moment. Accountable to whom? Or to what?
It has to be accountable to a community of citizens, a group of people understood to be free and, to some degree, equal. So the Constitution is the mechanism that defines public offices, spells out their powers, and sets the rules for making and applying laws.
It's like the ultimate operating system for the state.
Written by the people who agree to be governed by it, yes.
That leads to its very special legal status. The essay calls it the first and fundamental law. What does that really mean for an ordinary person?
It means everything. It means the Constitution stands above any ordinary law that a legislature might pass. Any law.
So if a new law contradicts the Constitution,
it's void. It has no force. This is often enforced through something like judicial review. It draws a hard line in the sand, defining the absolute boundaries of what government can do. If the action isn't authorized by the Constitution, it's not legitimate.
So it's a permanent constraint on the rule makers. But for that to work, it needs a source of authority. The essay says a real constitution has to be the avowed act of the people.
That phrase is the philosophical keystone. It's all about consent. The document has to be a genuine expression of the people's agreement to the structure and the goals of their government.
Without that consent,
you might have a document that keeps things stable, but it doesn't have the moral weight of a true constitution. It becomes the social contract made real, how we agree to govern ourselves, and critically, how we agree to limit that government.
And that idea of self-governance, of shared rule, has very deep roots. I mean, it goes back way before the written documents we think of today. Let's trace it back to the Greeks.
Oh, absolutely. The idea is ancient. They might not have had a single written text, but the concept of defining the politia, the political structure, was central to their thinking.
You're talking about figures like Solon or Lycurgus?
Exactly. They were famous because they were seen as fundamental lawgivers who designed the very arrangements of public life.
And Aristotle, he really pulled this all together when he talked about constitutional government. What was the defining feature for him?
His definition is so powerful because it's a moral one. For Aristotle, a constitutional government was one where citizens rule and are ruled in turn.
Rule and are ruled in turn.
It implies a basic equality, a shared responsibility. It was the complete opposite of a tyranny. Power was supposed to be temporary and shared among the citizens.
So how did we get from that abstract principle to the single authoritative text we see today? That's a big leap.
It was a long road. You had moments like the Magna Carta in 1215, which was a huge step in saying even the king is subject to the law. Then, of course, the Enlightenment thinkers like Rousseau, they really developed the idea the government's authority must come from the consent of the people.
That laid all the conceptual groundwork.
It did. The modern shift happens when people decide that customs and traditions aren't enough. You need one explicit, written document that claims to be the supreme law.
Like the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780.
A perfect example. Or the U.S. Constitution. The big revolutionary claim is that this one text created by the people at a specific point in time is the final word.
And to make that idea work, to actually limit power, you need more than words on a page. You need institutional machinery.
Absolutely. This is where constitutionalism gets tied to a few key elements. First, the rule of law. The idea that everyone, from the top official down to the average citizen, is under the law.
No one is above it.
Second, the separation of powers dividing government authority into different branches: legislative, executive, judicial.
And the third part is what makes it all work, right? The checks on that power.
That's the brilliant engineering of it all. Checks and balances.
Mhm.
It's how you make the separation of powers dynamic. It's a practical tool. The executive can veto a law, but the legislature can impeach the executive. These are the gears of the machine, designed to stop it from grinding to a halt or running out of control.
When you break down how complex that design is, you realize just how much deep analysis it takes to really get these foundational texts.
It is incredibly complex. And if you find this kind of deep, focused analysis valuable, we should mention the resources over on Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel.
Right.
It offers AI essay analysis, summaries, and critiques, all designed to spark reflection and rational thought on subjects just like this one. It's really about getting past a surface-level read.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, let's go to that highest level, the philosophical stakes. This is where we stop talking about articles and procedures and start talking about the very purpose of government.
And this is where Adler's framework is so useful. The idea of a constitution sits at the crossroads of other huge ideas: government, law, liberty, equality, justice, citizenship. A good constitution has to balance all of them.
And if it fails to do that,
Then the whole project fails. That balance is what determines whether a government serves the common good or whether it just locks in the domination of one group over another.
so constitutional design is where these abstract values have to become practical reality.
Precisely. Liberty, equality, consent.
Mm-hmm.
These can't just be words in a philosopher's book. They have to become real, working mechanisms in the world.
So the idea of liberty becomes a Bill of Rights. The idea of consent of the governed becomes a regular election schedule and a clear process for amendments.
That's the translation process right there. The courts that enforce those rights, the voting systems that validate consent, these are the institutional safeguards that make the philosophical goals of the state real.
Which brings us to a crucial test the essay brings up, what it calls the normative question. That might be an academic term for some listeners, so what does it mean in this context?
The normative question is about value. It asks not just how are things, but how should they be? For a constitution, it asks, does this document actually secure the rights and equality of all people? Or does it just stabilize an unjust system? It's really the moral audit of the entire framework.
That's a huge distinction. It implies that a constitution isn't good just because it's old or because it creates stability.
That stability could just be the stability of injustice. That's the key takeaway. From this right-centered view, a constitution is only philosophically good if it builds in universal claims rights that apply to everyone simply because they're human.
So if it just protects the interests of one powerful faction while ignoring others, it's failed.
It has failed its own philosophical promise no matter how well the government functions on a day-to-day basis.
This really gets to a core point for you, the learner, trying to master this. The huge difference between just having information and having real understanding.
Right. Information is just knowing the facts.
Yeah.
The dates, the articles, the lift of powers. You can memorize that from a textbook.
But true understanding, that's something else entirely.
Understanding is grasping why we limit power in the first place, why we separate government functions, why we demand that authority come from consent. The essay argues these aren't just helpful suggestions. They are the necessary conditions for any political system that respects freedom and allows people to flourish.
Without the why, the information is just inert.
It's the difference between knowing the names of the tools and actually knowing how to build something that lasts.
What a journey. We've gone from the basic definition of a constitution to seeing it as this grand philosophical project aimed at achieving justice and equality.
It really shows that a constitution is so much more than a set of rules. It's a philosophical contract designed to hold power accountable to freedom, generation after generation.
So we'll leave you with a final thought to consider. If a constitution's ultimate legitimacy comes from its claim to be the act of the people, what happens to that legitimacy when the system fails to adapt to or even actively ignores the evolving claims for equality and justice from large parts of that very same population?
That tension is at the heart of the future for any constitutional government. A profound question.
Click the link on screen for more on this and other essay subjects. Subscribe, share, purchase via link, and think rationally. See the many genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go.